So welcome back, you guys. You excited about the panels? Awesome. So this first one is going to be a stories panel. So one of the things that Melanie Miller said the other day is facts tell, but stories sell. And when you're trying to share keto with people, you got to share stories. And everybody on this stage here today has quite a story to tell. So I think the best way to do it is to just go down the line and have everybody give their elevator speech of what your story is. So let's start with you, my dear.
Hi, my name is Katrina Harris, and I am celebrating my Ketoversary this weekend. And it's 3 years now, and in those 3 years, I have lost 200 pounds. Wow. And thank you. So my short version of my keto story is that somehow at 400 plus pounds, I did not have any comorbidities, that I didn't have diabetes or high blood pressure or any of those kind of things. But what I suffered from was severe mental anguish from being so large, not able to go to a movie theater or a sporting event or a concert or go watch my kids play soccer because, I didn't know how I would sit down or how I would fit in a booth in a restaurant or things like that. And so, I turned down free trips to go places with friends because I'm like, can't fit in an airplane seat, or I don't know how far I'm going to have to walk, or things like that. So keto has been a wonderful lifesaver for me mentally. And then also in this whole process, I discovered that I have a disease called lipedema, which affects the fat. So my upper body is much, much smaller than my lower body. So I found out all of that just simply through social media. And so it's been a wonderful way for me to kind of help spread hope to people who are, very large, who think that there's no way that they're ever going to make progress. And I'm here to tell you, you can.
Hi, my name is Mary Roberts, and I've been keto for 3.5 years today. Yay!
Hi, Mary.
Hi, Brian. In a nutshell, I spent the majority of my adult life overweight and obese, and I developed type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, I had asthma and allergies, I had sleep apnea, and I was miserable. And when I heard about keto from Brian, I was doing Atkins at the time, and I told him I was doing Atkins, and I think he did this. He goes, "Don't do Atkins, do keto." So I did. Yeah.
We call that a limp brisket.
So I started, and my one non-negotiable was going to be not cheating, because I know myself and I consider myself a sugar addict. So I decided from day one that I wasn't going to do that. And so I think that's been part of my, the reason I've stayed on plan, because I couldn't risk going off plan. I had done it many times before. I knew where that road led, and I wanted to see what happened if I went down a different road. And so I've lost 106 pounds. I've reversed my diabetes. I'm no longer on high blood pressure medication. I have no asthma or allergy issues, no more sleep apnea. I don't snore anymore. And I've only been sick one time in the last 3.5 years, which is very different from what life was like before. Woo. Oh, Brian says I'm a gym rat.
And so is Katrina.
And so is Katrina.
Hi, my name's Ketovangelist. 6 years ago, I sustained a severe traumatic brain injury. I was diagnosed with a diffuse axonal injury, which is a type of brain injury that statistically 90% of patients never wake up from, and of the 10% that do, most are in a vegetative state. So first, I'm extremely lucky. I didn't eat, walk, or talk for months. My left hand was totally flexed inward. I was breathing through a tube in my neck, eating through a tube in my belly. Long story short, I was introduced to a nutritional protocol. It wasn't keto at first, but I regained some clarity. And I used that regained clarity, and I dove into study and began to research everything I could to optimize my recovery. So I'm researching metabolism, neurometabolism, mechanisms of neuroplasticity, nutrients for synaptogenesis, anything I could do to to heal most effectively and give myself the best shot at doing so. So now I work to help other survivors, friends, families, and others to improve their brain function and improve their recovery. So I work with people of all different walks to improve brain function, and clearly keto is a large aspect of that.
My name is Nicole Racine. A lot of you heard my story on Friday, but I'm a nurse. I'm a certified diabetes educator. I use a low-carb, high-fat, ketogenic approach to help my clients reverse markers of diabetes and come off their medications. I myself have been keto for 2 years. I think it's really important for practitioners to practice what they preach so I can better understand what my clients are going through and better help them to become keto adapted and actually understand the lifestyle.
You would think that would be the default, right?
Hi, I'm Brian Williamson, and I have been keto. How long have you been keto, Mary?
3.5 years.
I've been keto longer than Mary. And I started the ketogenic diet as a way to prove to my son that it was possible to sustain it as a lifestyle because he has epilepsy. And I convinced him, and so now I'm trying to convince everyone else. So there you go. Jimmy?
And I feel like I've said my story 1,000,000 times, but I'll do it 1,000,001. So 2004, I weighed 410 pounds on high cholesterol medication, high blood pressure, breathing problems. I was a mess at the age of 32, and I had just watched 4 years prior my brother Kevin have a series of heart attacks that nearly killed him. And of course, I did the whole low-fat, no-fat thing in 1999, right after that happened. And at the end of that experience, I was like, if I have to eat low-fat for the rest of my life to be healthy, I'd rather be happy and unhealthy. And it was a bad place to be in. And Christine, my wife, who many of you have met this weekend, was just always worried about me, until her mother gave me a diet book for Christmas. Thank you, Mom. So I read that book. It was Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution, and it started me on this whole low-carb journey, which I then transitioned into keto back in 2012, did a very famous experiment, talked about it in my book, Keto Clarity, but I changed my life in so many ways, not just physically, but emotionally, even financially, because of the business that came out of that with Live and La Vida Low Carb. So that's where I want to transition to next. How are you using your story? Because all of you have a great story to tell. How are you using your story to share it with others? Because it's one thing to have a story, and a lot of people out here right now have stories, but are you sharing it? Are you blogging? Are you doing anything with it? So let's hear how the panel is using their story.
So I am a Ketovangelist coach, and so I work with people all the time and helping them to realize that this is something that they can do. That a lot of people come into this and think, I can't do this, and usually it starts with, I can't be low carb, and then it comes to be, how on earth can I moderate the protein? And so really helping them get through that. I've got a presence on both Facebook and Instagram, and my whole thing is I want to be able to spread hope to people who think I cannot do this, or I've tried everything and it didn't work, and to make people realize we're not unicorns here, that this is something that you all can do. And I think you really have to focus on what Mary said, is the not cheating part of it has been key for me too. And honestly, it never even occurred to me that was possible until Mary said to me, well, I don't cheat. And I'm like, what? How can you be on a diet and not cheat? And so it was complete, revolutionary thought for me, and I want to be able to spread that to everyone to realize you can do this.
I too am a Ketovangelist coach, and I use the social media to I put my story out there in the hopes that people will see it and they'll think that they can do it too. I get a lot of messages from people saying, I am right now where you were before, and you've given me such hope. And that's what that's my goal, is to let people know they don't have to suffer, that they don't have to stay on the diet roller coaster and keep, counting points or taking pills or buying wraps or whatever it is, that you can just eat real food and heal yourself.
It's beautiful. In fact, on the year anniversary of my injury, I began writing about what happened the year prior. So that was kind of my way of understanding what my situation was and what actually happened and what I was actually doing. So it was very cathartic doing so, and that attracted a lot of people understanding and relating to my story. And what I've done since is create resources that I wish I had. So I started a podcast because I would love to have a podcast about brain injury recovery. So I started the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. I am soon to release a book called How to Feed a Brain, Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair, because I wanted to know how to feed my brain. And so creating the resources that you wish you had is simple as that, reaching out with that. And like you, I get a lot of people contacting me that say, I am where you used to be. What now? And having an answer and pointing them to resources it feels really great to be able to do that.
I think the biggest impact I've had on people, a lot of my clients come to me after starting a low-carb, high-fat, ketogenic diet, freaked out because they go to their doctor, they're better, but their cholesterol's up, or they tell their doctor what they're doing. They're eating bacon and eggs for breakfast every day, and their doctors tell them they're going to die, or that they need to take a cholesterol-lowering medication, or something along these lines, and so they get freaked out. And a lot of my clients come to me wanting reassurance from somebody in the medical profession that understands keto and low carb, high fat, and can understand how to interpret a lipid panel in the context of a ketogenic diet and reassure them that they're not going to die. In fact, they're doing something very beneficial to their health. And sort of look at the whole picture. A lot of these people are feeling better, have lost weight, their diabetes has reversed, their health markers are improving, their blood pressures are like all of these things, but then their doctor's like, oh my God, you're killing yourself, you're eating eggs. And so it's like it helps them to feel reassured that, because a lot of people like put medical professionals on this pedestal, like anything that the doctor says it has to be the holy gospel. And so they get freaked out. And I think it helps to have more and more medical professionals telling people that this is a healthy way to live, and even if it goes against the standards and the guidelines and against what their doctor may be saying, it's a different context and it's a different paradigm.
I try to keep it to myself.
Thank you very much. So,
I think Kevin answered it best. I tried to create resources that I wanted to be available. I mean, Jimmy's podcast was crucial, as I'm sure everyone here can attest to. But it was the only one. And when you listen to all the episodes over and over again, and you're like, okay, what else do you have? There isn't one. Okay, I'll make one. And then he asked Jimmy to be on there, which is basically what happened. Although Mary was my first guest.
I do have that accolade.
Yeah, she's actually listened to that episode.
see, he likes you more than me.
Right. That's it. I create the stuff that I want. I wish people had. Like, there's no specific keto conference for the science and the stories of keto. So let's make one.
You made that too.
Yeah.
So for me, after losing 180 pounds in 2004, I had my story featured on the front of the Atkins website, and they're like, let's put it out there. And I'm like, okay, sure. I had no idea what was about to happen. So they put it on the front of their website in November of 2004, and I started getting all these emails from around the world. How'd you do it? Who are you? Where's your blog? Where's your book? And I'm like, will you people leave me alone? And finally I was like, okay, this was 2005. What do I do? And I was like, had a few friends that said, hey, I have a political blog. Why don't you make a health blog? I'm like, what the heck is a blog? 2005. Now everybody knows what blogs are. And so I started Living La Vida Low Carb blog. And then a year later, this guy says, if you talk half as good as you write, you should podcast. So what did I ask him? What the heck is a podcast? And of course, 2006, I think Fred Flintstone was doing a podcast, but nobody else was doing podcasting at the time. And so I started the Living La Vida Low Carb show, which now is the longest running health podcast. But what started it all? Passion. How many of you here in the audience today, and I know all the panel will say yes, but how many of you in the audience can say verifiably that you have a bona fide passion for keto? Scream it loud, scream it proud. But here's the bigger question. How many of you are doing something with it by making content, blogging, podcasting, doing something with it? You hear how softer that was, you guys? Now, I'm not trying to shame you or anything, but every one of us will tell you this. You gotta be making content. If you can talk, you need to be podcasting. If you look good on camera, you should be doing videos. If you like to write, you should be writing blogs. You should be out there on social media. If you're not already engaged, hopefully from this stories panel, that's what you get. Because your story matters as much as all of us on this panel, right? Right? And so what I want to ask the panel next, so we'll start with you, Brian, to kind of change it up. What would you say is your biggest fear, or was your biggest fear, in getting started and sharing your story? Because sometimes people are like, well, Jimmy Moore, Brian Williamson, they have such good content already. Why should I share my story? So what would you say to people like that they have their own story to share, but they feel inadequate because they feel like other people are already doing it?
Well, my biggest fear would obviously be spiders.
Captain
So-
Obvious, thank you.
Right. So I had the same question when I started doing whatever I was doing. Because, look, I know me. And when you spend 24 hours inside your own mind, which I'm assuming everyone in here does, except for that guy. When you spend 24 hours inside your own mind, you tend to think that the rest of the world understands what's going on in your mind. It's just familiarity. And if you're thinking about doing something, but you're like, because trust me, nobody, I can assure you, nobody has wrestled with, nobody wants to hear what I have to say more than me. Nobody wants to read what I have to write more than me. I mean, like, nobody wants to have anything to do. Trust me. Trust me. But you have a voice, and you have a voice that's different than everyone else because it's your own voice. You have a story that's unique because it's your story. So it doesn't mean that you have to go chasing numbers in terms of audience. But what it does mean is if you have a passion for sharing that, and if you have a passion for helping people by sharing that, then don't let the fact that there are other people doing it dissuade you. You have a voice that's unique, and you should let the world know about it.
I'm one of the biggest introverts in the world. So,
No.
yeah, sharing my story and getting out there and helping people and getting my voice out there was really hard for me. But I'm a big advocate of facing fear and just kind of walking through it and doing it anyways. And I would encourage anybody with a story to share that, because that's the biggest way we're going to get this message out there and get the science out there and get evidence out there that it works is people continuing to share their stories, regardless of if you're afraid or if they think it's not worth it or whatever. Every story makes a difference.
I appreciate that a lot. At one point in my injury,
as I was writing and I understood the statistics, and it's like, I was afraid that I would be giving people false hope. Like I'm like a 10% case, and then, of that 10%, most are in a vegetative state. So I'm like, if I start getting it out there and people have hope and then they don't make it, they don't get the success that I get, like I'll be hated for that, A, and B, it's giving them false hope. And then actually Rob Wolf told me at one point, he's like, there's no such thing as false hope. Hope is hope. And if you give people hope, that's value, and that is absolutely something that will change their life either way. So recognizing that it would really, really be beneficial for people to spread a message, and it doesn't need to be something outlandish like a brain injury case. When your story is unique, and there are people there that are going to relate to your story, and talking about it and just putting it out there is exactly what we need to do to get this message to the public.
My biggest fear was that people wouldn't listen, because I felt like I discovered fire or something. I'm like, oh my God, you're just not going to believe this. And I just want people to hear what I'm saying and believe that if I did it, and there's nothing, special or amazing about me, we all have the ability to do it. And I want people to know that they can do it too, that it's possible.
Absolutely. So I think that most of us tend to be our own worst critics, and I think that, even when I started it, I was, just really at the beginning, and I'm thinking, well, what if I don't keep up with it, or what if, all of these kind of things that happen. And I would say, as a coach, and I think Mary would say this too, that the number one thing that we have people coming to us with is, what am I doing wrong? I'm not losing 30 pounds a month like everyone else. And what I want people to realize, and in sharing your stories, you can make other people realize that that is not the norm, that the slow losers, because we're so metabolically damaged, it is the story to share. And that you don't have to look perfect before you share your story. You don't have to be done before you share your story. And I think that that's really one of the most important things that I've learned with this, is that you don't have to be self-confident with it either, and that I'm a huge believer in fake it till you make it, and put it out there and let other people know where you are so that they will have a connection and see that there are people like them.
I would say when I first started, it was inadequacy. Who am I to be sharing about diet and health? And even when I started gaining back some weight with the insulin resistance, who am I to talk about health when I don't look the part, like you were just saying? And that can be frustrating. And I know a lot of you connect with that. And here's the thing. I think the secret sauce to my success has been people relate to me because I don't bullshit you. Honestly, I try to be authentic every
You just potty
time
mouthed.
I talk. What's that?
You just potty mouthed.
Sorry, I'm keeping it real.
Keeping it real.
Because I think authenticity is the key. How many of you hate the fakery? I said this the other day in my talk. The fakery has got to stop. And I think more people that are honest about their relationship with themselves, like you were saying, loving yourself and knowing who you are, and realizing that people want to hear what's the bad. Because if it's all rosy and you're not rosy in your life, you feel inadequate. And you're like, well, I could never measure up to that, so then you do nothing. That's not the answer. I think if we all share our stories openly, and I'll tell you, when you do that, you get the arrows. It's just gonna happen. And when you get those, celebrate them, because it means you're doing something right. So you'll get over that. The inadequacies, you get over them, and then you get to sit on the stage and tell your story someday. It's pretty cool. So we're going to open the floor to questions here in a minute. So go ahead and start lining up if you'd like to ask the panel a question. We have a little bit of time for that. But one more question for you guys. What would you say has been the most gratifying part about sharing your story? Let's start with you again, Brian, online or however you've shared your story. What's been the most gratifying part of it all? He's trying to think of a snarky comment.
No, this is the one time I'm not. Then, so that's why it's taking me so long. Because the first thing that came to mind were snarky comments, and I'm just like, nope, file that one away. Nope, file that one away. Oh, no, that one too. I mean, it may sound trite or trivial, but just people who say that because I read this article or because I heard this particular person talking on the podcast or whatever, it helped me. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it has to be something as hugely profound as "you saved my life." Not that. Just I found what I was looking for with this. I couldn't find the answer to this question, and there I found it. Because that to me is a fundamental. That is why we do what we do, is to try to get the answers out there. So for me, the most gratifying thing is when I actually help someone in that capacity, and I'm not just even the smallest way.
My answer is pretty similar. It's when people come back to me and say I've changed their lives or I've saved their life or significantly improved their health, something where I've had an impact on somebody else. One person here just said to me today, she's a nurse as well, said I was her influence for going keto 8 months ago, and that was like, made me so happy. It's like why I do this.
Yeah, the biggest, as Brian was saying, it doesn't matter how big or small it is. Just a simple thank you and some acknowledgement that confirms that what we're doing is making an impact in the world. That's enough right there.
My answer's the same. I'll reiterate that. It's very gratifying when someone, I've had several of you come up to me this weekend and say, I follow you and your story's so inspiring and you've kept me on track, and just being told thank you and hearing that you're an inspiration, it just drives me to keep sharing my story.
Yes, the same thing, and I would even take it a step further with lipedema, and to have been so open about, this is why my legs look like this, and have other women say, I had no idea, I thought my whole life that this was my fault and that I wasn't doing enough, and now I have a reason for why I'm shaped like this and why things don't work, and to be just really open with people in my journey, and I think I want to be open so that people know that they can do this and that there is hope to be found, and there's reasons why we, have these troubles that we've got, and to let people know what they are.
And I'm sensing a theme song here because ditto. But I'll even take it a step further because I've had the great privilege to go travel to other countries as far away as Australia. And I remember the first time I ever went to Australia in 2012 to do a speaking tour. And it was in Melbourne, Australia. Anybody from Australia here? Nobody. Good.
Aussie.
Good eye, Mike. So I went to Melbourne and I asked the audience, how many of you have listened to the Live and La Vida Low Carb show? And 3/4 of the audience raised their hand. Now that's halfway around the world, you guys. I had no idea that there was that many people listening. And so it dawned on me at that point, oh my gosh, this is real. And so when you hear that, and then of course all you guys have shared your stories, it truly is gratifying and amazing the impact that you can have. Because all of us up here, none of us are special. We're just like you. I tell people that I'm not a RD, PhD, MD, or any D after my name. I'm just a dude that's sharing his story and sharing it passionately. And I think we can all agree that's exactly what we're trying to do up here as well. Let's take some questions from the audience. I see a little line here, so go right ahead.
Thank you all so much. You all are very inspiring. My question is for Mary and Katrina. I've heard it said a lot here that people are not motivated to exercise. They can't find the motivation. And I think you guys are really good examples of, Brian referred to you guys as gym rats, and I think that's awesome.
They
And
are.
yes, and I love that. Can you maybe share like how your process and how that happened? Was it right away? Did you start working out right away? And how did you find the motivation to exercise? Because I think a lot of people are struggling with that.
When I started, I didn't exercise for the first 5 months because one of my issues over the years was someone mentioned it on the panel yesterday. When I would work out, I would do something that was too advanced for my condition, and I would be miserable and I would feel like I was going to die. It was always cardio. So I decided when I started keto that I wasn't going to do any exercise until I had figured the food out and lost some weight, because I figured if I had lost weight, it would be easier. So I started with cardio. But I was always kind of looking over in the weight room, and I liked what I saw over there, and I wanted those results, and running on the treadmill wasn't getting me that. So I think Brian told me to go lift heavy stuff.
Well, that's not exactly how I said it. There were more profanities, but
There was.
so if I can just interject. So Mary was just like dropping weight like crazy, and she came to me. She said, "I have energy for the first time in my life. What am I supposed to do?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She's like, "I hate running." I'm like, "Well, then don't run." "Well, then what else is there?" So what she knew was exercise, fitness means running, and that's it. And I was like, "Dude, go lift some stuff." She's like, "I can do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead." So we worked it out, and then now you can't keep her out of the gym, for crying out loud. So there you go.
So I actually, so to answer the question, what motivated me, I was not motivated. And I realized that if I waited until I was motivated to do something, I would never do it. So I took action and became motivated.
The results motivated
So I exercised for the first time in my adult life on purpose. And I joined the gym in March of 2015. I had lost 70 pounds, so I was 330 pounds when I joined. And on the same day I joined, I hired a trainer. And I think Brian and I have talked about this, that I'm an all or nothing kind of person, and I was all in. I think one of the reasons I avoided exercise my entire life, because I was like Mary, that I thought as a woman, the only thing one does is aerobic, and I don't like to sweat, and I don't like the expenditure of energy that requires, and when you're 400 pounds, you're gonna get out of breath taking a quick, just a walk to the bathroom. So then my other problem is I am a total white girl and I have zero sense of rhythm, and doing aerobics or Zumba, it's me going, what are they doing? And by the time I figured it out, they have long moved on. So an aerobics class for me is standing and watching. So with what I do is the same as Mary's. I lift heavy in the gym, and it's been really awesome because the people that are in the free weight section are very different from the people in the aerobics room and different from the people on the free weights. And I have found this incredible camaraderie from these muscle guys who have seen me go from 330 pounds to where I am, and they see the dedication that I've got in there 5 days a week without fail. I work in travel too, and so I'm in Jamaica and I'm in the weight room at 5 a.m. before we start touring resorts. And it has been, when I have rest days, it's like, what do? I don't understand this. I've got this restless energy, and it is a bizarre feeling to have gone through, 45 years of my life, and now I'm like, I need to get back there, and Mary and I have not been in the gym all week, and it's been weird.
So I just want to talk about rest days, because Katrina actually abides by a rest day. Mary, I had to practically wrangle her into it, because she would say, today's a rest day, so I'm only going to run a little bit. Like, no, rest means rest. So that's another thing. Like, when you get started, give yourself rest days. It's crucial. I know I'm not the one who has asked these questions, but I just, these are pitfalls.
Well, when I went and joined, when I started with my trainer, they were like, we would like for you to be in the gym 3 to 4 days a week. And I'm like, okay, I'll be here 5. And I'm now back at 3 to 4 days because 5 I was not adequate rest. So, I think that to start with keto, I don't think you need to go in and say, oh my goodness, I have got to exercise. I do think you're going to get to the point where you have this energy, and it is a great way to channel it. And I highly recommend a trainer so that you don't hurt yourself.
Thank you, panel. Next question.
I'm at a point in my life where I'm ready to take on keto as a full-time job. My youngest children have just started school, and I'm very passionate about keto. I have a Facebook group of about 500 people who are local to me that have all come from word of mouth alone. I have never publicly posted on my personal page, I started a group, you guys join, because I wanted it to be real people who are really interested, I wanted the group to grow by word of mouth, by people's successes showing for themselves. And I'm at a point in my life where I'm kind of wanting to jump out bigger, make my presence known about keto more publicly as a full-time job. And probably a lot of other people in the audience are feeling the same thing. Like, what can my next steps be? What were your first steps when you were feeling inadequate in some ways about, I'm no expert, my major was speech communication, so I'm not a health expert. Do I need to have a health certificate behind my name? What would my next steps be in this situation? Or for anybody wanting to jump out bigger?
There's several schools of thought here. I can tell you what my plan was. When I started, again, Fred Flintstone was the only one podcasting, so nobody was really forging the way. Now you have a lot more resources available. When Ketovangelist was started just a couple of years ago, you already had a lot of infrastructure in place because podcasts were a thing. I didn't have to ask Fred how he did it. And so for me, I relished in being empowered patient Jimmy Moore. I have actively avoided getting MD, PhD, RD, NTP, any of these things after my name by design, because I think I relate to an audience of people in such a way as empowered patient Jimmy Moore, more so than registered dietitian or NTP. Not that those things aren't important and that they don't have a place. I think credentials can have a place. I know my wife Christine's going through the Nutritional Therapy Association to become an NTP right now, and she will be in November, woohoo! And so you have all of these things that you can try and do, and there's certifications. I know Ketovangelist, you guys have the coaching program that you guys do. There's all kinds of things that you can get plugged into. I say find the one that you resonate with the most and run with it. And even for you yourself, just kind of figure out, hey, what am I good at? Do I like talking to people? Maybe I need to do one-on-one, kind of coaching and counseling. Do I like kind of just talking to a crowd? Maybe try to do a podcast or a YouTube channel. So again, it's going to depend on you and your personality as to what the next step would be.
I really like the idea of starting a meetup and having people come and just relate with you, not necessarily a doctor, but in the same place where they've been, right? And being able to show people the means without the credentials is valuable, I've been told by family members, you really should go to school, so much at this point, why don't you get an MD or get a PhD or whatever, and kind of recognize that, I can positively affect the world exactly where I am right now. In fact, those credentials would diminish my ability to positively affect the world to the extreme that I'm able to.
So I have a little, somewhat different perspective on it. I think that we need more people who are passionate about low carb and ketogenic diets to enter the healthcare professions, get legitimate degrees, become RDs. As much as we hate the education they go through, become RDs, become MDs, go back and start the process of going to med school or becoming a nurse or anything, because if the passion is there, you'll overcome any obstacle, even if it's years of schooling and education to get those degrees. Otherwise, start a meetup or start a support group at the layperson's level and acknowledge that you're a layperson trying to help other lay people and support other people. I have a hard time with people trying to make a business out of keto and low carb, because I feel that's what's happened with a lot of healthcare and a lot of fitness. People are trying to monetize on people's desperation to get healthy, and we need educated, well educated at the very basic level, being what we learn in getting a lot of these traditional degrees, helping people at that level. But I don't think there's anything wrong with lay people starting support groups and meetups, even if you're charging a little bit to come to it. But that's just my opinion.
So there were a couple of questions there that you had asked. One is about credentialing, and the other is about what do you do next.
Credentials.
Right.
You know.
So right now there's no like official keto credentials. Stay tuned. I'm working on it. But I work a full-time job, and I do all of this that I do on the side. If I could figure out how to quit my full-time job and do this full-time, I'll assure you, I will tell you. The answer is hustle. You got to grind. You got to figure it out. I mean, if you're talking about building a business doesn't change just because it's keto. You got to find a whole bunch of people who are willing to give you some money in exchange for goods or in exchange for a service or a product. Devise a service or a product, figure out how to sell it. That's how you get to do the next level. And I mean, that's just simple business practice, and it doesn't change just because it's keto. Now, the credentialing thing, I'm a nobody, and I like it. However, I'm starting my master's program in applied nutrition in January because, like what Nicole is saying, the conversations that I have would go better for what I'm trying to do if I can flash the badge, and they can see, oh, okay, I've got the stamp of approval. You've got an education, but it's really depends upon you. But for example, what's the name of your Facebook group?
Right now it's Kyla's Keto Chronicles, just
So
because I started it as my personal journey. This is what I'm doing. These are the recipes I'm making, and it's grown.
Right. So what I'm saying is, when you get up here and you say, I've got a Facebook group, and you don't tell anyone who it is, how are you going to grow it? You know what I'm saying? So if you say it, okay, that you get in the habit of actually marketing and selling yourself.
Right.
And I don't mean selling yourself like you're thinking.
Right,
I mean,
right.
so it's just a matter of.
We knew what you meant.
Yeah. There you go. So I just, from a simple business perspective, figure out something that is a product or a service that people are going to pay you for, and
I like that.
and figure out how to get a big audience. That's just business.
All right. I like that.
Be scrupulous though.
Yeah.
Be moral. There are a lot of not moral people who are trying to just make a quick buck. And I think many of you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name any names, but I'll spell it for you later. Don't be them.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Next one.
2 years ago, I was diagnosed pre-diabetic. And of course, I'm not anymore because I have gone keto. And I'm 78 years old, but my problem is, thank you, but my problem, and I think somebody else might have this problem, I eat out a lot. I'm single and I have a lot of friends and we go out to eat all the time. My problem is my heart bleeds when I look down and see what they're eating. And I started out by saying something, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose all my friends because they have started saying, oh, don't show her what we're eating, or don't show her this. What do you suggest I do? Just keep my mouth shut?
Yes.
Okay.
No, and let me elaborate why I say that. What is more important? Your health or their opinion of what you're eating?
Their health.
Your health or
their health.
Your health or their opinion of what you're eating. Listen to what I'm saying. What is more important? Okay. Your health or their opinion of what you're eating?
Well, my health.
Okay then. Who cares what they think?
Oh.
Now, I know your heart bleeds because you want to save your friends. Okay.
Can I modify her answer a little bit?
Okay.
My health. Like that. Not my
yeah,
health.
thank you. Right.
My health.
Right, exactly.
If
Your
you are-
health is what's more important.
If you are extremely proud of the success that you're enjoying on a ketogenic diet, you should be beaming with pride. And I'm telling you, they will not spend a lot of time trying to talk you out of it. That's my opinion.
And not only that, I know that when you look at their plate, you're thinking, oh, I want to help them, my heart bleeds, I want to help them, they're killing themselves, blah, blah, blah. They're grown people. You are not their mother.
Yes.
Wait, are you their mother? No, okay, just making sure.
I wanted to add something to that. You know, when it comes to dietary protocols or anything where you're asking somebody to change their lifestyle, that needs to be a program of attraction, not promotion. You can't be like, no, you gotta do this. If you're like that, people become very quickly defensive. Telling somebody that they're eating the wrong things is comparable to telling them they're worshiping the wrong God, right?
Right.
So don't do that. Just lead by example, and after a while, they're gonna be like, so what are you doing over there? And that's when you can tell them. They're more receptive.
I just wanted to add into that. So I am a family of 5, and I'm the only one in my household that is keto, and I'm surrounded by garbage all the time. And the rest of my family would benefit greatly from doing this. And it's almost like, the cobbler's children don't have shoes. I mean, I feel like that's what it's like at my own house. But I have, my youngest child is 16, my next one is 19. I've got my husband and my mother who all live with us. And I cannot make them want this as much as I want it for them. It has to be their choice. Now, if we're talking about young kids, I think you can have a little bit more control, but mine are teenagers and they can drive themselves to wherever they want to go to get what they want to get. And I think all you can do is plant seeds and live your life the way that you are going to be healthy, and the pieces will fall where they will.
And then I would only add, live by example. Yes. Because they're watching you whether you think they are or not. Even if they're making snide comments, they're watching. They want to see what happens. And I can tell you this, my mother and my sister have heard about keto till it comes out their ears from me for many years. They only just started it in January of this year. My mom has lost 60 pounds and has greatly improved her myasthenia gravis, which was a grave, almost fatal condition. She's totally unnumbed her body where it was numb. She can sleep in the bed again for the first time. That's the power of living by example. When someone in your own family, who is the hardest, by the way, to reach, you live by example, they want to be a part of that. And my sister Beverly's lost 40 pounds. She had back problems, and that's helped resolve. So be the example. Even if they're snide in the process, they're still watching you. We have time for one more question, you guys.
Actually, on that very note, I tend to find that a lot of people think once they get the cliff notes of keto and they kind of get the basics down that they think all of their problems are over. So to be fair, I feel like it sometimes helps when we relate to them that it's an ongoing process, truly forever, to take control of your health. And so I admit, when I can, those struggles that I still deal with. For example, I still struggle somewhat with getting the correct amount of electrolytes. Would you guys be willing to share some of the stories of your biggest struggles even after you started keto that you still had to take a little time to figure out to learn?
Do you mean, okay, let me clarify, ask a clarifying question. Do you mean in the beginning or up till now?
From the beginning and up until now, what was probably one of your bigger struggles that you had to find you need to overcome?
Pistachio ice cream. And ketchup. Not together, that's disgusting. Who said that?
So for me in the beginning, I couldn't wrap my head around the idea of never having a dessert again. And so I did things like Atkins bars and shakes, and I made a lot of keto desserts and stuff like that. And then I finally realized that I didn't need to replace my addiction, exchange one for another. And it got to a point where I wasn't willing, I realized that losing what I've gained by being keto wasn't worth any of those things. You know, I can live a happy, healthy, whole, fulfilled life without having a dessert. That was my, that was my biggest struggle. I do still have a tendency to, the real thing does not appeal to me. None of the things I used to eat bothers me. I can be around people eating them. But like walking around here, the keto cookie, I had to avoid that table a lot. Because you get the mentality that, oh, that's legal, and you start playing carb counting games like I did in the beginning. I would make keto blueberry muffins. Ooh, well, each one is only 2 net carbs, so if I eat all 6, it's only 12 carbs. Well, it's not normal to eat 6 muffins at once. So that was my big struggle.
She literally ate them at once. Like, it wasn't one after the other.
I think one of the things to realize is that even though, like Mary and I are coaches, we don't have it all figured out, and that we are human, and that there's no such thing as crossing a finish line and going, oh, I'm done and I've got this. And I think that we still struggle with the things that got us to whatever our high weights were in the first place. And I know for me, one of my biggest ways that I got into keto was to not do the artificial sweeteners. And I didn't do them for like 2 years. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe I can have that. And then, trying to get them back out of my system again, it's not so fun. And I think that that's really why I can say I've never cheated, because I can get into plenty of trouble all on my own with keto legal stuff, that I can rationalize an entire pint of blueberries and get myself into all kinds of problems, into the same habits that I was in with other kinds of foods. So there's really no need for me to cheat, because I can mess up with keto stuff.
I think one of the biggest struggles I see in women, and something I struggled with at the very beginning, was getting over the fear of eating a fat and thinking that this was still, low carb but low fat. Just because it's been so ingrained in our minds to avoid fat and buy lean chicken breasts only and things like that. And so a lot of the women I talk to will start keto, but then they're still trying to do low fat. And I'm like, no, you can't do that, because you're going to feel awful. And your body's thriving on fat now. So it's kind of like getting over that mental hurdle and reprogramming your mind to get rid of all the messages that everything needs to be low fat, and allowing yourself to consume copious amounts of fat, indulge and eat the bacon, and not buy lean chicken breasts only and fat-free everything. The stuff you've been probably doing the last 20, 30 years of your whole life.
Yeah, like the idea of thinking that a diet you need to deprive yourself. And I really appreciate what Mary was talking about with like keto cookies and like keto legal things that are still not food, really, not real food, not fuel for your brain, body, and soul. And so yeah, getting over the junk food, the keto legal junk food, as well. That becomes at like conventions like this, like PaleoFX and whatnot, come out with like bags of like paleo or keto junk food, and it was still junk food, And getting past that was probably the hardest.
Dave, the biggest challenge for me has been knowing that as you get older, you might have to tweak things a little. So maybe Atkins worked great in 2004. Then I needed to add in the real food element in 2010. Then I needed to add in more focused attention on ketogenic in 2012. Then in 2014, maybe I get a little more serious about adding in purposeful, the other F word, fasting. And so you're constantly having to add new things. And isn't that how we all develop anyway? If you started with low carb, okay, great, it worked for you at one time, but are you just gonna stay a baby your whole life and just stay on low carb? Add new elements. Now I'm looking at the gut microbiome. Now I'm looking at getting good sleep and stress control. I think you add to it. You don't want to just think you've graduated of the school of keto and think you figured it all out. You've got to keep adding new modalities. It doesn't mean keto doesn't work, but it means for you, being very bio-individual, you've got to find what works for you.
So I was flippant in my first response, and I'm going to be the contrarian now in my actual response. My brain works in such a way where these are the rules, that's it. So I didn't struggle with anything the moment I actually made the decision to eat correctly. So when I decided, okay, I'm keto, that's it. There's the non-negotiables, that was the list. I don't struggle with anything because that stuff's not food anymore. So I only eat food now. And sugar's not food, it's a drug. It'll kill you. I no longer have a desire for it. So I didn't really struggle with anything. To Jimmy's point, I spend a lot of time experimenting on stuff now too. And Mary can attest, the dessert thing never really, I didn't care. And keto baked goods, blah, nah. What?
But you did love you some Little Debbie's.
Prior to keto, yes, I loved Little Debbie's.
But not 2 boxes at a time.
Oh, no, yes. Not 2 boxes if there were 4. Yeah.
You're for it.
I'm the contrarian here. When I set it in my mind, this is the way it is, that's it. I'm not going to struggle with it because struggling with it means I haven't committed to it as far as I'm concerned. And but that's me, and I'm not saying that's for everyone. That's just
But to be fair, Brian, your struggle may be yet ahead.
Oh, snap. It's like this got just weird now.
Thank you, panel, and thank you, questioners. And that's it for the stories panel.